There we go. I feel like I have to start again. Hello. Session 4. Um, okay, so we're going to head to the slides and then we'll do some questions after. So it's my fear that I will forget to record the things. So there we go. Did it. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to take these off. We are going to be doing our introduction to our subpersonalities, otherwise known as our fragments, our survival story, our parts, our, James Hollis calls it our provisional self, basically the way we put ourselves together because of our childhood, and family history and birth things. It all factors into there. So it's who we became, but not who we are. And we often mistake that for our personality. So we're going to be doing some wild mind and some IFS in here. Okay. So I wanted to, one of my practices is, even for doing this kind of thing, for instance, is to do a 4-direction circle. I have a longer video on my YouTube if you want to see how I do it, maybe outside, but even just in shorthand, as we're going into the inside of the circle, we can just remind ourselves about the outside, that we have this whole self that is us. We have a healthy, nurturing adult self who can hold everything. So even if I, forget some things or make a, mess of my presentation, my NGA can hold me and that. So to remind myself of that, and to remind myself I have somebody that sees a big picture of me that's not totally caught up in just this moment, who can hold the paradox. And that I have this full-bodied lover of life who can feel all the emotions and is okay with all of them. And that I have my, oops, I'm just gonna, ooh, it does work. I can admit people. Welcome. And that we have our muse, inner beloved, anima, animus, our counterparts, our guide to our soul, that we have this, and together this makes this container of us that can hold us as we go into the inside of the circle. So just to say, it's just a great way to remind yourself that this is also there. And I also wanted to just talk briefly about self-awareness and how sometimes we consider ourselves really self-aware, but if we are inside of the circle and we are aware of our fragmented selves, like we know we have an inner critic because we're stuck in that all the time, we're in overwhelming emotions all the time from our wounded children, and we're aware of that. I don't think that's self-awareness. I would think self-awareness is with a capital S, and it's being on the outside of the circle, able to work with the inside. So a lot of times I think people think that, oh, they're really aware of themselves, but you're really aware mostly of your strategies and your parts in some form, but not about the bigger whole you. And here's our poem for today, called The Healing Time. Finally, on my way to yes, I bump into all the places where I said no to my life. All the untended wounds, the red and purple scars, those hieroglyphs of pain, carved into my skin, my bones, those coded messages that send me down the wrong street again and again, where I find them, the old wounds, the old misdirections, and I lift them one by one close to my heart, and I say, holy, holy. So to remind us that our parts are not out to get us. They are not trying to make life difficult. They are not intentionally, tripping you up. They are trying to protect you. And so the way we work with the inside of that circle is through really profound respect for what our parts have done to get us this far. It may not be working anymore, but it certainly did. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. So that's the way to enter the inside of the circle. So how do we have an inside of our circle? Why do we have these parts? One definition of trauma is overwhelming emotion in the face of overwhelming aloneness. And no matter how good of a job our parents did, we will have all experienced times where we were overwhelmed by our experiences and nobody saw it. And we were forced to figure out how to cope with sometimes the uncopable. So who steps in but our parts? And thank God they do. Otherwise, there's a lot of things I think that we literally wouldn't survive if it were not for these parts. So one way to look at this inside of your circle is our pain management system. These are the ones that help us cope with that, our overwhelming aloneness, abandonment things, and being overwhelmed in general by life. So on the inside of our circle, we're going to be kind of taking the same 4-direction way through here. Today, I'm hoping to cover the north, our loyal soldiers, and the east a bit, and then we'll move shadow and doing some work with exiles with our wounded children at the end, and hopefully kind of bring it all together so you have some tools that you can use for your own working with your insides. So this is our the flip side. When we're not living in our whole self, this is where we are. We're bouncing back and forth between these ones. And to say that so we have in this map, our wounded children are at the bottom here in the south. Our parts, the rest of the map is all in service to the wounded ones. That's their job, to keep those wounded ones from either experiencing more pain or to do something when the pain gets out. That's their job, or to banish it totally to the shadow. So to be curious about how they're doing that for us is part of is the way forward. So our managers, we're going to start with. Our wild mind model is to call them our loyal soldiers, and the IFS model is calling them managers. So our manager selves, there are the ones that keep everything contained. Their motto is to say, never again. This will never again happen. I will make sure of it. And the goal is to keep you small and safe. So they are all about containment. The escapist firefighters, which we're going to also do, their motto is up and out. Get you up and out through all our addictions and everything that we use to numb ourselves, get us up and out. And they have kind of a when all else fails, this is what I'm going to do kind of motto. So sometimes it helps to know the mottos so that it helps you discern what it is when you're hearing the voices in your head, that you can kind of play. It doesn't have to be an exact, plugging into the map, but it sometimes helps to have I think I know who that is, because that can help you trace backwards to find out what happened to trigger this one. So they have a certain flavor to the things they say and do. Okay. So let's talk about loyal soldier first. The loyal soldier comes from, and some of you already know this story, but it comes from World War II Japanese soldiers that were discovered, some as many as, I think, as 30 years after the war ended. And they had been shipwrecked or lost on various islands. And for that entire time, they thought the war was still happening. So what kept them alive was the belief that they were still doing something for their country. They were in service. They were, doing something important, so they didn't lose their minds. And then when they were rescued, if people would have just said, "Oh my God, the war's been over forever. I can't believe you haven't. You're still doing that," they would have probably lost their minds. So the Japanese culture gave them a hero's welcome, and then discharged them from service after thanking them for for serving. So we have the same way of working with this loyal soldier that we all have. We want to get to know it, really, and we want to honor it for its years of service. This is a really important piece in all of our psyches. It's protected us. This is our first line of defense. Bill would say that your loyal soldiers developed around the age of 3. So it comes in when, for all of us, this isn't just if we've had, certain traumas. This is for everybody. We need a pain management system. And this is one of our first key people. So his job is to keep you from experiencing further pain. So this one can be your inner critic that will criticize you before, so that nobody else can. It wants to keep you small and safe, gets you to be invisible, to shrink back, tells you the world is not safe. It's your very own inner critic or inner tyrant. It can come out like a tyrant, so it can also be the you that is then yelling at other people to keep them small and safe. It's wanting to do it all across the board, making sure you don't rock any boats. And this is the part of us that wants us to be nice or good/perfect. And like I said before, their motto is never again. So they will work to keep you small and safe, to make sure that that wounded child that they are protecting does not experience that level of pain again. So, and they're very good at their job. So you can't just, tell a loyal soldier once you've learned its strategy, you can't just say, thank you so much, I'm done with you. I think people try that, but it will just kind of move into a different way of doing the same thing. So you actually want to really get to know this one and find out what exactly they are doing for you. What is the strategy? How long have they been doing it? And you yourself want to really see how that's been the best strategy you could have possibly used. Of course you would do that. Of course you would make yourself invisible. That just makes sense. So that you can really understand your own story, and through that end up having choice around how you show up in the world. So first, just to get to know it, and it helps to just have an image. So to have an image of this one, and to realize that they're really trying to do a job for you. To them, the war for childhood survival is still on. They have no idea that you've moved on, that you're not that 6-year-old anymore. They don't know. They haven't been updated. So they're still, stuck on that island, continuing to battle, really, in theory, an unseen enemy that they think is still operating. So that's part of it. We have to let them know that we're not that little child anymore, and we've grown and we have some resources, because they actually don't know that. So in IFS, internal family systems therapy, we call them managers. So this is often the part of you that's very tired, worried, anxious, angry, feels very guilty. It carries a heavy burden of responsibility. It's very concerned with safety. Like I said, risk averse, avoid everything, especially pain. It's very, it's very common that we are operating from this part of us. So you might know some of the archetypes, the good girl, the loyal son, conflict avoidant. This part of me definitely helped me avoid conflict, make sure I didn't rock any boats, and try to be really good. So tries to control everyone and everything. You can probably read some of these for yourself. This is also sometimes can be a tricky thing, because your manager can really be good at sounding like self. They know the right words. They're often, for people, they're often the part of you that will bring you into therapy, because this part of you is like, oh my God, we got to do something with this system. And they will bring you in. And so they know the right words. They are, they're good at, we can, one of the things that can cause us grief later on is we can actually have been laboring a lot of our years thinking we're really, we're really healing ourselves, and we can actually be still stuck in our manager self, who's doing all the work, who's working really hard, but we're still not in our self on the outside of the circle. So they are very skilled parts of us, and they get tired, they break down. They really believe it's all up to them. If they don't do this, like, they have to do this. So if you hear yourself saying often in relationship, well, I have to do this, there's no other choice. That's one of your managers who just really feels like it all comes down to them. So, they are afraid that your wounded child will get out of your system and overwhelm you. And that does happen. So they're not wrong. That can happen. And if you picture your wounded child like the one of you that is carrying the wounds and the pain, but it's also always tugging on your sleeve like any little child to get your attention. It wants you to see it. So these managers are wanting to keep that from happening, because they don't want it to be further injured. So if they have to lock it up and put it somewhere else, they will. And then put a front on to make sure nobody knows that you're in pain, that there's a wound there. They keep everything functioning very well. So this can be our OCD self, our super, really competent self. It can be our manager in lots of ways. We can really manage things through this part of ourselves. So they're very they're very competent. And to say we're not actually trying to get rid of them. We don't the opposite isn't that we get rid of this manager and now you don't ever get off your couch. That's not what we're aiming for. We're just aiming to help our parts not be so extreme and not be stuck in these black and white places where they have no choice about the work that they do. Because being a mature adult is about having choice about how you show up in the world. And so sometimes you can choose to be, doing maybe the good thing, and sometimes you can choose not to. And you have choice around it. But this one does not. This program is scheduled, like this is a track that's running and you can't get off it. That's a manager self. Here's important stuff to, I think, also know is how it might show up in your body. Our managers are about containment, so they often use the bigger muscles in our body. If you have lots of chronic neck and shoulder tension and back issues, they are. One of my instructors would say that your IT bands that run down the sides of your legs are your good girl or good boy muscles. They keep you upright. They keep everything contained. This might be considered, like we've said before, the lid muscles. So your well, and even if you look at like a soldier kind of posture, they keep you upright so you don't collapse. That's their goal. So you can also find these parts of you through your chronic tension and pain and issues that are showing up in your body because they are expressing themselves that way. So to be curious about what does it feel like when I'm in my manager self in my body? For me, that's a really upright kind of place. I also picture mine. So I have a picture with a waggy finger here. I I picture mine with a clipboard and a waggy finger, and she very much has here's what we're going to do. And she can get shit done, and she's very on top of it. But she could also run my life in a compulsive way if she's in an extreme role. So, but you can find them in your body, and that's just something to be curious about. So here's a way we can also find I'm going to let you read this. I won't read them all, but find our parts is through our defensive strategies, because that's what it is. It's our defending against life, actually. If our being in our whole self is about being open-hearted, our parts are about defending against life in a sense, because it's been too painful, too much, too overwhelming. There's too much abandonment. So we have all these ways of defending. So we can look at our defensive strategies and find our parts that way. So let's say we can, our controlling, maybe aggressive self, or changing the subject. Like these could be, I'm just trying to think of what would be my manager self here. They could have you going quiet, smiling all the time, laughing, workaholism, right? They might have you, obsessing, needing constant reassurance. It could be those kind of things that I'm going to say that our escapist is going to have some of the other, like checking out. These are all our strategies. So to be curious about yourself, how you put yourself together. What are you using to avoid things in life? So another thing to be curious about is our loyal soldiers, our manager selves, are afraid of something bad will happen if they don't do their jobs. So that's one of the things that we can ask them about as we get to know them. So managers always have fear. If I don't do this, this will happen. And we can keep following that trail to actually get to our wounded parts that they protect. It can sometimes take a little bit, but we can ask those questions and get there. So they have a fear. So if I have a part of me that's wanting me to avoid conflict, and so it makes me not speak my mind or not put myself in situations where there might be strong people, or it has me, not rocking any boats. I could ask this part of me, what will happen if you don't do that? What will happen to me if I rock a boat? if you don't keep me, if I rock a boat, and then we can have a conversation around, well, if you do that, this will happen. And generally it does lead somewhere back to, you will lose connection. Could be, you could die. It's a big thing that they're afraid will happen. And so that's why you can look at that behavior and think, oh my God, I should just stop that. But it's like when you tug on that string, it leads all the way back to this key thing that they're afraid will happen. And so it was never about it's never about what it's about. It's about this thing that they're afraid will happen if they don't do that. And so we have to work with that thing they're afraid will happen in order for them to stop doing their extreme role. So yeah, that's key. They cannot stop doing what they're doing until we help them with what they're protecting. And a key part of that is honoring them, and really saying to them, like, I get why, as much as I can, I get why you're doing this. I get why you're criticizing me. I get why it's important I stay small and safe. You're right. That's been really dangerous in the past. I've gotten in trouble. It was painful. So again, we're not arguing with them. We're just saying, but here's something new. I'm not 6 anymore. And I have these resources that if someone does criticize me, or if I do rock a boat, here's what I can do. So we're entering into this conversation with them, being the, like our other images, we're being the driver of the bus. We're being the one at the table that's gathering everybody. But I'm taking their input, and then I'm deciding if that input if I need to follow it or not. Maybe my part is saying, do not enter into that conversation, that something dangerous could happen. And maybe they're right. So then maybe I say, thank you so much for that heads up. You're right. I'm not going to say or do that. That could be too. So I don't want to get rid of, if this one of me turns into being a good, observer of danger, I'm not trying to get rid of that. I just want to have it not be extreme, so that I have choice about whether I think it's dangerous or not. And then I can make a decision. So that's what I'm aiming for. So just so you know, they consider themselves the superheroes of your system. And they really have been. They have served you. They consider their behavior heroic. And often some of the strategies we actually do too. So if you ever find yourself feeling noble about a certain way that you show up, that's a great way to look for a protector, because they feel very noble about what they do. It's like they have to do this. They're the only one. They need to do it this way. They are long suffering. This is one of what mine would have said, that they can take more than other people. They can handle it. It's okay for them, so they feel very noble about their job. So to remind you that that when you hear those kind of thoughts in your head too, you can go, oh, I know who that is. That's my cake bacon Superman, Superwoman. Okay, so we're going to turn to the east of our map here. And so if you have any questions about that, I'll have some time. So hang on with them and we'll go to those at the end. So moving to the east of our circle is our escapist. Yeah, like the picture says, this one needs to get you up and out. And so the way this can kind of sometimes work in our system is that if the loyal soldier manager has not been successful, so the pain has gotten out anyway, then the escapist needs to step in. So if the loyal soldier is making sure that young one does not surface, keeping the pain down, well, it will happen that our pain will surface because nobody's that good. Something will happen, a situation happens and the pain gets triggered, and then the escapist needs to step up. And sometimes if our childhood strategy, our loyal soldier, was never that effective, we're actually more in our escapist than in our loyal soldier. So people that really are struggling with addiction or are like not even struggling with it, they're in it, their loyal soldier probably was not as effective at protecting them as some of ours were. And so they are more in the escapist than in the loyal soldier manager. So, and like Gabor Mate would say, we need to ask not why the addiction, but why the pain, because that's what it's all about. The pain has gotten out, and this one of you is committed to doing something about it. So their favorite strategies are, numbing, checking out, addictions. Another one is only think positive. So, when you have that, like, I just don't, it's in the past, I don't want to think about it. I don't go there. My mom would say, I don't know and I don't ask. That's an escapist strategy, because we don't want, like how we talked about when we were doing our whole self, how the East is masked, or is, you can recognize your East by its deep capacity for presence. And it can be with anything difficult because it can be so present. Your escapist cannot. It cannot be present. It cannot turn towards anything difficult in your life or probably anyone else's. And so it just needs to do something about that. So if I'm not okay with my pain, I'm not going to be okay with your pain either, because it has to go both ways. So I'm going to avoid all of that. So I'm going to stuff my feelings down. I mean, we joke about that. And again, you're going to use your body to do that, because that's also our containment system. You're going to need to contain it somehow. So you're going to use your body to do that. It can give you the foggy brain, confusion. We could say, I just don't get it. And that can be our part who there's something risky that will happen if you do get it. And so it wants to keep that all kind of hazy. It can literally remove you from situations. So I remember in my younger years, quitting a job when there was some kind of conflict that happened, and I'm like, I'm out. So it can have you really remove yourself from any difficult situation. And in fact, if it could have you also, maybe combined with your loyal soldier, it could have you think of, that's going to be difficult, I'm not going. So it's, it really just wants you to get up and out. So what's key about this to notice is when your escapist is activated, you can have that, like, okay, something important's happened here. I'm in an addictive, I've gone to my addictions. And if you can even kind of step back a little and go, that's really interesting. I wonder what happened here. Something in me that's in pain was triggered. And so my escapist is like doing something with it. And even just to have that distance, to get like a curiosity around, okay, something important happened. What do I need to do about that? And so that would be kind of the starting place, because this part of you is also working to protect the overwhelming emotions of the wounded child. So that's, so one of the conversations you could have with your escapist would be, I get that in the past we've needed to check out. I get that we have needed to be up and out and to get out of this situation. That's right. That's been really important. You are right. There's very painful things that have happened. And just so you know, I'm feeling like I could actually turn towards those things now. Here's some tools I have that I didn't have then. And would you trust me to be with some of these difficult emotions and to feel them? That could be, part of the conversation that you could have with an escapist. But first, you have to recognize that that's what you're doing, and that it's in service to somebody in you. In the IFS model, we call them firefighters, which I also like this image, because a firefighter, if the house is on fire, they don't care about your furniture, your carpets, or nothing. They just need to put the fire out. That's this part of you. It's like, this something is on fire. I need to put it out. So this is the reactive, impulsive part of us. So, this can be that angry part of us that, just explodes because they are reactive. So you can kind of get curious about that, your reactive, impulsive self, as your escapist firefighter, and that it's needing to do something. So this is our shopping selves. This is our surfing the internet selves, and it is our explosive. And then we say, I don't know where that came from. Here, it came from here. So this is also a less socially acceptable way. Our managers are very socially acceptable. They work really hard at that. Even if they are critical, they are, they work hard to keep themselves contained and together. Whereas our escapists, not so much, because they're concerned about the fire. They're not concerned about image the same way, not as concerned about self-control, obviously, and managers are big on self-control. So these ones aren't. So they're okay with the binging, they're okay with that because that's not what they're concerned about. They're concerned about the pain. So, and they can often be at odds with other parts in your system. So that's important to kind of mention too, that we can have parts in our system that can really not like each other. And so you can be in that pattern of your manager is trying really hard, but it gets tired. And then when the manager can't do it anymore, your loyal soldier, the escapist takes over. And now you're in a binging cycle or you're doing something. And then the next day, your loyal soldier kicks your ass about that because they really don't like the strategies of or your escapist could be saying, oh my God, just let loose. You can't be so uptight. You need to stop doing that, right? Like they are pitted against each other because they don't like the strategies that the other one is using. And what's important about that is they are protecting the same wounded part, just with different strategies. So to be curious about that, again, to be curious about who are they protecting in me? What's happened? Like there's obviously some pain here that I'm maybe even unaware of. And they're both working really hard with different options. And one is more socially acceptable usually than the other. So this is a different kind of way of looking at it. It's not the same kind of wheel, but so let's say our exiles, our wounded children are locked away in the inside somewhere, and we can find that often sometimes in the core of our body, but locked away. They could be, you might even have an image of that like behind a locked door or a cage or in the basement, some kind of thing. They are tucked away so that they don't impact the system. You will have to befriend your protectors first in order to get to a wounded child that you want to heal. That's just the way the system works. You cannot use a battering ram to go free that wounded child from the inside. They do not respond to that. I often say that you cannot use the same amount of force that caused you to put the walls up in the first place to go in and heal it. You just can't. You need permission from your protectors in order to go in. That's why the befriending piece is so important. You have to understand why they're doing what they're doing, who's doing it, why they're doing it, what are they afraid will happen if they don't. And you get their permission so that cake baking Superman moves out of the way for you so that you can go to the one that's in pain. That's the only way. Otherwise, you will get, if I do that in a session with somebody and I have an agenda, which of course would mean I'm in my parts and I'm pushing into your system will react to that. And then perhaps, that's when the binge eating happens after that, or some kind of major critical thing that happens because we didn't get permission to go to a wounded part. So it's a very respectful way of working with yourself. It's not forceful. Your system will give you permission as you befriend it, because it turns out they don't want to be as extreme as they are either. They don't want to do that. Your manager self doesn't want to be so extreme and keep managing the shit out of everything for the rest of their days. They're not really interested in that either. They just think it's important and they have to do it. So if we're letting them know that there's someone else on the scene, here I am as my healthy adult, I can help you. I will help you protect that young one. One of the conversations I had with one of my protectors was to say, because I haven't seen my dad in 7 years, was to say, I will never put you in that situation again. That I am now consciously protecting you, and we will choose as an entire system how we're going to do that. So you're having these conversations with your inside, and it has to be relational. They will not respond to anything else. So that's really important. So just to kind of wrap up here, we have, to remind you that it is our whole self, our wholeness that heals our parts. Our parts cannot heal parts. So if you are trying to do something and you're not getting anywhere, chances are you're in a part, and that's why. Your little wounded selves will not respond to your parts. Your escapist won't respond to your manager. If you could criticize yourself about your escaping, your binging, your addictions, it would work and you'd stop. It doesn't. They don't respond to each other. So we have to learn to work with our parts, not from them. That's the other piece, is when we are working from them, we're inside the circle. It's not, remember our C words, there's no clarity in there. It's confusing. They're all, we can't do it from inside there. And to remind you that we are more than we appear, that we have this capacity, this huge whole self capacity to do this work. And we all have it. So that's, just to remind you of that. So, and if we haven't learned to do that, to tease apart our story to find out who's who in there, we are operating from inside the circle in our parts, even if we're doing it well. We might have really competent managers for whom life is still going swimmingly, and they don't see a need to take it apart because they like how it's going. And then all of a sudden, bam, something happens and you're like, what I was doing so well. Yeah, because we were doing really well from our manager, and they still don't have the capacity to show up because they're tired. So that's important. We are inside the circle until we are learning to be outside. And the problem isn't that we have parts. Again, we're not trying to get rid of them. It's that they're stuck in extreme roles. They're burdened by pain, trauma, and attachment injuries. Like they are stuck. They're on a hamster wheel that they can't get off of. They are burdened down with things that they've picked up, and they're tired. And we are the ones that they're waiting for. So we can make a difference in our own system. So here's some little tips about befriending your protectors. One of the first questions in IFS that you ask is, let's say you've identified, I have a loyal soldier that's really criticizing me and really going after me. I want to work with it. You want to ask yourself, how do I feel toward my loyal soldier, this manager that I'm wanting to work with? And if your thoughts are, well, I just want it to stop, or I want to fix it, or I wish it wouldn't do that, you are in the inside of the circle. We're wanting to fix. We're afraid of it. We are not sure what to do with it. There's no clarity there, right? So we're asking ourselves that question is important because we need to be in our whole self. Whole self sounds like, sweetheart, tell me what happened. Like, I get something really important happen here, and I'd really like to know. I can see that you're stuck, and I'd like to help you. It's not critical. It doesn't, again, it's fiercely compassionate. So it will tell you the truth, but it won't be a spiral. So that's a really important question to ask so that you know where you're coming from. And again, if you're afraid of it, you're in a part. And so then we want to step further back, get ourselves back in our whole self, and then work with that part. And get to know them like you would anyone else. They want to tell you about themselves, I think. They want you to know. Like those World War II soldiers wanted people to know that they had sacrificed their whole lives in service of something. These ones want you to know the sacrifice they're making for you, why this is important that they do it. And they don't want to be alone in it, actually. So it's like coming alongside, it's like watching the critical part of you hammer away at somebody or yourself and coming beside it and saying, I see what you're doing there. Tell me about it. Tell me why this is important, why we need to criticize ourselves right now. Tell me why we're doing this. Oh, I get it. Oh, yes, you're right. That makes sense. So we're wanting to really validate them and get to know them. We are offering ourselves that mirror that we never had. So we're not criticizing them. Again, you will not change anything by hammering at your own system, but curiosity, compassion, connection, those C words, that's what we want to use if we want to get to know them. So are you curious about this part? If you're not, wait till you are. Be curious about what's happening in your system, because that will tell you you're already in the outside of the circle. If I'm curious about what happened, what got triggered in me, what I need to do, who is this one? Then I'm operating from the outside of the circle. So, and really first recognize the voices. That's what can be kind of helpful. Again, it doesn't have to, you don't have to know for sure, is this an escapist or a manager? Like, you could just know it's a protector. You want to hear, what are the thoughts you hear around that? Is it small and safe? Is it, Bill has another image of the lion tamer, which I always think of too. It's like that part of you that says, get back, get back. I used to have this really tight muscle in my shoulder that would sometimes click like like a rope, it felt like. And in one session that I was doing with receiving, I was kind of playing around with the imagery of what that was. And my instructor, I said to them, I said, well, it feels like, it's this string, and I pull this string back, and I tell myself, whoa, don't get out there. And he said to me, are you sure it's a string? And so I'm playing with the image, and I said, no, it's more like a rope. It's a rope. And then I had this image of, no, it's like those harnesses that they put on kids with the thing, and they, to keep you from getting out there. And I had this immediate memory of which of being told this memory. I don't know if I remember it myself, but that my mom used to tie me to the tree in the front yard so that I didn't wander down the street. And I'm sure my mom in that moment was not trying to be mean or tell me a message that I was a dangerous human being in the world. But that image I got that my protector then took over doing was, yeah, don't let this girl go. Lord knows what she'll do if she gets out there. We need to restrain her. And it was showing up in my body as tension in my shoulder, and had that same kind of image of like, yeah, whoa. And so my internalized message was like, I can't trust myself. I don't know what will happen, both from the world and from me out there. Clearly, this is dangerous. And as soon as I got that memory, that muscle let go, and I have never had that since. So that is how our protectors show up. So we can find them in our, using our imagination, because that's part of our whole self also, around around what's happening in our body. And that's how we can find out what they're doing. So again, ask your protector what it's afraid will happen. So I could have asked that one, what are you afraid will happen if I get out into the world? And it's definitely going to take me, or does take me, down to that path of, I'll be disconnected. I'll be all alone. And my core wound is around being all alone. So my personality was built in service of making sure that would not happen. Make sure you don't get rejected. Make sure you don't rock boats, because we cannot afford to be alone. And I probably said before, I was adopted. So it comes from being in that abandonment place of being literally all alone, and not being able to make sense of that, and not having anybody mirror that to me. So my protectors had to figure out how to help me survive and get me through that. And then they learn about the world from that. The world's dangerous. Something's really wrong with us, or this wouldn't have happened. And then my personality is born in service to never touching that pain. So that's why, I'll just leave this on for a moment and then turn it off. That's why to really have a understanding of why our parts do what they do, it's not because they're trying to be assholes. It really is because something important happened, and they're committed to not repeating it. So if I need to be a socially acceptable human being so I'm never abandoned, then, somebody once said to me, that's probably why you had 6 kids. And I thought, oh my God, probably. And it wasn't to have it's not the crowd. It's not that I need like people all around. It's like the existential, I need to be in a system I can't be ousted out of. But yet, if I do that, I'm limited in how I show up in the world, because I will always be in service to that story. Oh my God, I can't say that because I'll be alone. I can't, and then the real me is not showing up in the world. You're not seeing the real me. I'm not living that. And then the world doesn't become itself either, unless each of us is contributing our actual selves to the world. So that's so it's important, these stories. And then once you kind of unpack those stories, that's the way real self-compassion is born, I think, because how can you not be self-compassionate about, oh my God, that makes so much sense. once I uncovered that particular wound, and it was really intensely painful, when I found myself in it, I got why I had made myself a certain way my whole life, and that I had work to do around not continuing that way for the rest of my days. That it had served me so far, but I can't continue that way as an adult. I have to be willing to rock boats and be, my actual self, which is a little bit different than that. So, any thoughts, questions you have? That was a lot to pack in, but what's brewing for you? Go ahead.
I have a question with regard to pain, physical pain in the body. You mentioned last session about the lid muscles that you keep things down. What would do you have any ideas what leg or knee joints would be related to?
Well, again, like, we can't say, well, if you have your right knee, it's this, and you're like, but we can just be curious about it. So then it's not that the knee joints are going because we age, like that's kind of the thinking, right? Well, we're getting older, it all breaks down. It's not, that's not really true. So we could also look at the tension we're holding in our legs as part of the issue that then causes us to lose fluid in our knees, that makes our knees not so mobile anymore. That's one way. So you could look at your own, you could look at what knees and joints might symbolize, like movement, for instance, movement forward. What I remember having a session once where I realized I was missing the bottom half of my legs. Like I just had, it's like I couldn't feel them. I didn't have any legs, but at least in the bottom. And I thought, oh my God, no wonder I can never take a stand for anything. Like what would I stand on? So you can just kind of play with like, what would I be holding there? What happens when I'm, like when I'm standing, that particular tension? Can I use my imagination to, get curious about what would it be? Am I trying to keep myself from collapsing? Because that's a manager role, so that we don't collapse, right? They are afraid that if they're not upright all the time, we'll collapse and we won't get off the couch, because that would be an escapist, right? So that could be like, am I keeping myself stuck in a place and I actually need to move? There's so much in, hips and joints, and just being curious around it.
Okay.
Yeah. So does that help?
Yeah, I've just had in the last couple of weeks, I've had a weird left knee where all of a sudden, if I bend it too far, like if I squat and bend it too far, then I lose all my strength, and to the point where I'm actually shaking. It's not really a sharp pain; it's just a dull roar, and it's like that's really weird. Never had that before.
Yeah.
Haven't had knee problems. I'm not that old.
Yeah.
But,
Well,
yeah.
and if you can rule out, like, I didn't do anything, I didn't, give
Mhm.
the hammer, and, like, my listening people here be like, go get that checked out. No, but, but, yeah, I mean, like, to be curious about it.
Yeah.
And you could also ask, like, that kind of pain, this kind of sensation, where have I experienced that before?
Mhm.
What might that, if this was a part and you could have a conversation with it, you could start
Mhm.
with, how do I feel toward my knee? I'm really
Yeah.
irritated that it's doing that.
Yeah. I was like, actually helpful to look at it that way.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look
I'm
at
a
that.
pretty good manager.
Right. Exactly. We all
Trying to
do.
build myself up. Yeah.
Right.
Trying to
Yes.
hold it
So
together.
then
Yeah.
you ask them, what would happen if we didn't do that?
Yeah. Okay.
That's the question. What would happen if I didn't hold myself up like that? That's the curiosity. So yeah, to be curious about it. That's what and then to ask yourself, where else do I feel that, or what else is that similar to? Um, that could be good questions also. Anyone
Thanks.
else? You're welcome. Anyone else have any?
I have a question.
Mhm.
So when you're looking at the outside of the circle, and there's north, south, east, west, and then you're looking at the inside, is it useful to use the same outside north towards the inside north? You know, is there any usefulness in that?
Well, yeah, in Bill's model, because then there's a connection, because in that map, you want to use, like, so if I'm stuck in my wounded child in the south, I want to use the opposite side of the map to heal that. So the map is helpful in, you know, if I'm stuck in the shadow, I'm going to need some healthy east to help me. So it can be helpful to plug that in because it's the opposite side of the circle that you might then consciously focus on. So yeah, we would want my healthy, nurturing adult, not my inner critic, to heal my wounded child. So it can be helpful to plug it in the map. And again, it's the map, it's not the territory. So what's really important is building that relationship with your own inner system. And the terms can help, but it's the flavor of what they're saying to you, what their role is. Like you just want to get curious about that.
I'm just thinking about like the application of, you know, if you know, kind of how to come towards it. So if I was in an escapist, I would, and that's the east, I would want to come with the west. If I could get outside the circle and
Yes.
think about and activate, you know, as we were talking about looking at the outside, how you could activate sort of that, the outside west, that would be useful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
Yeah. Your deep imagination, you'd want to go, yeah. Because then if you're in your fragmented east, it's trying to take you up and out. And so you want to go down and in.
Round. Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And you want to have that conversation because your escapist is like, no, we don't. But you're saying
we're out. We're not going down.
We do. Like, I get that we've avoided that in the past, but I actually really do want to turn toward it. And I'm inviting you to come with me and do that. And yes, you're right. We're gonna have to feel some stuff. So again, we're like, you know, we're not arguing with it. If it's telling you, oh my God, we can't, there's too much pain there. You know, fragments believe that if you tap into the pain, it will never end. It's like a big black hole that you'll be down. Because to them it was, and they were all alone in it and they can't get out. So of course, who wants to do that? But your adult capacities to be with pain, to heal, it's just not true that you can't go there. Even to really difficult things, you know, you can, because you have presence, you have a healthy, nurturing self, like you really can. So it's parts that are like, oh my God, we cannot. So you just get who that's coming from. Okay, I get it. I get it. You're right. We used to have to do this all alone. I get that. No wonder that was overwhelming. I get it. I wouldn't want to do that if I was you either. But here's my commitment to you. You won't be alone in it. I'll also go in there.
So the east inside can't tolerate pain. The west outside, you know, is able to go deep and can take all of it.
It can digest, it can make meaning, it can go, you know, it can use its imagination. So yeah, it really can. That outside of the circle really can meet the inside. So yeah. Any other thoughts or questions, or is there, you know, even if you feel like sharing which one you find yourself more in, and you don't have to share that, but if anyone, you know, like or your curiosity around working with that.
I just really appreciate your generosity in doing these Sunday sessions. I'm sorry that I haven't been able to be present live for them until today, but it's really great, Becky. And early on, the beginning of this session, I don't know if I wrote down the quote correctly, but you said, you know, you were talking about self-awareness, and that, you know, if you're only aware of your woundedness, if you're only aware of the inside of the circle, you're not actually self-aware. And the entire session, that's just kind of been repeating, and it just kind of, like the penny dropped there with that phrase, and I really appreciate
Oh, great. Yeah.
I mean, not something you haven't said before, but somehow the way you said it just then, I
Yeah.
was like, oh, right, right.
Yes, that it does not be right when people say, but my problem is I'm so self-aware. I think that is not what you think it is. That's not your problem.
Right. You know, we really, really know our woundedness, but we're still living it.
Yes.
Right? And that's not actually self-awareness. Yeah.
No, to be critical, and it may be like that's your manager being critical of the whole system in there. And so you think I'm really self-aware of that. But that's like a loop unto itself. It doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
So
It's
yes.
one of the things I like so much about this model is like really, really building up the outside of the circle rather than spending so much time on the inside, which, you know, most of us know, you know,
Yeah.
to the nth degree.
Right. We know how to be in there.
Oh yeah, I'm great at it.
Right. Yeah. We don't know how to be on the outside and turn toward it and to hold that.
I have my nurturing generative arbutus branch that I took from the retreat that we did together that I just keep around, you know, like remember that piece. Yeah.
Yes. I just got a arbutus wooden thingy at a store yesterday. I was like, oh my God, that's arbutus. Yeah. So find things that represent your whole self to you. Keep them, you know, that's why I love the 4 directions circle. Like just keep some things to remind yourself. Because I mean, really what we're after is getting more familiar with what does it sound like?
Right.
That we can then go, wait, that's not, nope, that's not my nurturing generative adult because I have an agenda here and I really just want to fix that thing. And they do not respond to that. And rightly so. You know, that's like having your 14-year-old try to heal your little 8-year-old by telling it to stop crying. You know, it won't work. There has to be a healthy adult. You know, and really, I think it does. Yeah, it boils down to giving yourself what you never got, and really getting intimate with those things that we were missing, and allowing ourselves our experiences. You know, one of our favorite manager strategies is to say, well, but my parents did, like, you know, they were really struggling. They had a hard time. Life was tough for them. And that could all be true, but it serves to not help, you know, not have our own experience and allow ourselves to really metabolize our own pain. And that's what we need to give these ones permission to have their story, and then to meet them in it. So that's what makes a difference. And then when they realize, oh, there's an adult here and she really sees me and she cares about my tiredness or she cares about this wounded one, because it turns out I do also. And then when we can work together with that, they don't have to be so extreme. They can be off doing something else. They don't have to be, you know, keeping me from all the difficult conversations. Yeah. And in fact, I had to go towards difficult conversations on purpose. I'm one of Bill's things with the loyal soldier is, you get to know, you know, the thing it's protecting you from. But then another layer of that is when you actually go toward that thing on purpose to go through the flames that you've been protected from. That's another, you know, that's as we mature into ourselves, that's the invitation. Not only am I not going to avoid that, I'm actually going to go toward it. That thing which my protectors were afraid of, because I need to. So I had to go toward being all alone, go toward those wounds, because that's what adult me can do. So, and it was definitely painful. And it changed my life. So there we go. And then they don't have to protect it anymore, so that we could all do something different with our time. So any other, we're out of time. So any other quick thoughts?
Becky, were you able to figure out a way to share your slides?
Yes, I did. Do you want them?
Okay.
I did.
Yeah. Sorry, great. I'm not on that. His email is on the list. I would love it if you would be able to give me some access as well. Thank you.
You are welcome.
And Becky, you may have said this previously. Do you have retreats coming up this fall other than in August?
I don't. No, I know. Yeah, but I'll keep you posted.
All right.
Yeah, I know. It's so, I just for all you to know, it's so great to do it in person on the land and have the wanders that, because then you learn about these things and then you go out and do it. So one way, to work with your manager, loyal soldier, is to go for a walk with that one of you, go for a walk with your inner critic, or go for a walk as your inner critic and really feel into the one of you that's really trying to do something for you and really get to know it from the inside out. Again, your whole self is not afraid of that. Your wounded parts might be afraid to get to know that one, but your whole self is not. So
For anyone who hasn't done one of these retreats with Becky, I just can't recommend it highly enough. And I'm so disappointed you don't have them coming up.
I know. Thank you. Yeah, I know. I would love to do
To be able to really, work with the land and work with the body just is tremendously helpful.
Yeah, it's great stuff. I personally love it. So, okay. Thank you, everyone. So we'll do some shadow, I think, next week, and maybe some wounded stuff, wounded child stuff. And then on the last one, we might just kind of put it all together, do it or whatever we're missing at that point, if that works for y'all. The wounded ones need a certain kind of, that's some delicate territory in there. So we want to be in our whole self in order to do that. So that's important. Okay. Have a great rest of your day. You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Becky.
Thanks, Becky.
You're welcome.
Enjoy the
Have a good
beach.
week.
Yes, I will. Have a great rest of your day. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.